There's a kind of silence you only hear in a marriage when love starts speaking in code. It isn't loud, not at first. It's the clink of plates at dinner without eye contact, the way the TV fills the room so words don't have to. The smell of cumin and roasted garlic drifting from our kitchen, but no appetite, no second helpings, just her phone lighting her face like a ghost in a dark theater. The distance didn't arrive with a slam. It seeped in under the door like rain the window forgot to keep out, and in that quiet my mind began its small negotiations. She's tired, work is heavy, it's a phase, hold on, hold on. Pauses became punctuation. Ellipses hung in the air. We moved around our apartment like respectful strangers, careful not to disturb what we no longer understood. The rhythm of our lives faltered. Short lines, longer breaths, a story losing its beat. The first real sign didn't feel like a sign, it felt like a habit breaking. She started taking late walks after dinner, always with a sweater, even on warm nights, like she needed protection from something she'd chosen. I told myself trust is oxygen, starve it and everything suffocates. So I kept the windows open and pretended the air was enough. The smell of coffee in the mornings turned bitter, not because the beans were wrong, but because she was somewhere else when her body sat opposite me. She stirred her cup with that tired half-smile and said, "We should try that new place on Thursday." She meant our place, the small, warm restaurant on the corner where the owner knew our names, where we toasted to new jobs and first anniversaries. Our restaurant, it sounded like a bridge being repaired. I wanted to believe. Thursday came with rain, the city rinsed in a gray that made streetlights look tender. I arrived early, sat at our usual table by the window, watched umbrellas bloom and close like cautious flowers. Steam from pasta fogged the air, glassware gleamed like held-back tears. A server I didn't recognize asked if I wanted to wait or start. "I'll wait," I said, and rehearsed the lines that might save us. Keep it gentle, ask, don't accuse. Let there be pauses where truth can land softly. The minutes arranged themselves in a neat little line. 10 became 20, 20 became 40. By 50, hope was a shaky table leg. I checked my phone so often it felt like a ticking heart. Then the door opened and she walked in, not alone. He was the kind of man who made space with his presence. Not loud, not careless, just sure. He placed a hand on her back in that small, familiar place you only touch when you've been invited to. She looked up at him and laughed with the kind of ease I'd been trying to earn back for months. The room didn't spin. It narrowed like a lens tightening its focus. Our table became a witness, the server became a blur. The clink of cutlery was a metronome measuring the distance between what I thought we were and what we had become. She hadn't seen me yet. I watched her pull the chair, I watched him take the opposite seat. I watched my future sit down without me. There's a moment in every betrayal where the mind looks for a softer explanation. Maybe it's her cousin, maybe it's a client. Maybe there's a hidden camera and this is some cruel show about trust and endurance. But his fingers found hers on the table, not gripping, just resting there like they'd been taught. My heart picked up speed, but my breathing slowed, as if my body wanted to disappear with dignity. I stood, the chair groaned, she turned. Her face did a small, helpless thing, like a candle failing in a draft. "Arjun," she said, and in the way she said my name, I heard 100 unsent messages. "Hi," I managed. The rain wrote vertical lines down the window beside us. "Late, huh?" It sounded like a different man trying to make a joke at a funeral. He stared at me with a calm I hated, an absence of apology that felt louder than any excuse. No raised voices, no shattered glass. Just the terrible choreography of 3 adults standing in a cozy room stacked with memories. "We should talk," she whispered. "Not here. Not here in the place where we'd touched knees under a tablecloth and planned a future with grocery lists and borrowed courage." I looked at her hand in his. The server approached, then retreated. A couple by the bar stopped mid-sentence. The owner, Mr. Pinto, watched from the kitchen door with a face too kind for this scene. I wanted to say 1,000 things. Instead, I pulled out my wallet, placed 2 bills on the table, and said, "For the table we booked." A polite fiction. A small, useless kindness to a night that didn't deserve it. Then I turned and stepped back into the rain. The city hummed distant traffic, a bus exhaling at the curb, somewhere a stray dog barking at nothing. The world didn't end, it just kept going, which felt worse. On the walk home, the puddles carried reflections of street lamps like broken coins. My pockets held nothing but my hands, fisted, then open, then fisted again. At the apartment door, I stood there too long, key in the lock, forehead against the wood, listening to the quiet choose its side. Inside, her toothbrush sat where it always did. Her sweater lay soft on the chair, the one she always stole from my side of the bed on cold mornings. The chair looked suddenly empty in a way furniture shouldn't. In the kitchen, the lemon plant by the window had gone dry, its leaves curled like secrets. I poured water and watched the soil drink. That's what grief felt like, the earth finally admitting it was thirsty. In the bedroom, her perfume lingered in the shape of her. I sat on the edge of the bed, shoes still on, rain in my hair, and waited for the kind of sob that rearranges a man. It didn't come, just a breathing that sounded like it belonged to someone who had misplaced his name. The phone buzzed once, then again I didn't look. The third time I did, a message from her, home in an hour. Please wait. I stared at the words until they blurred, then sharpened, then blurred again. Wait. For what? An explanation that would move the furniture back to where it used to be. I put the phone face down and listened to the rain soften. The clock on the wall clicked modestly towards something, every minute a step away from the man I had been when the evening began. I turned off the light and sat in the dark, the city's glow leaking in around the curtains. The apartment felt like a theater after the audience has left, rappers, echoes, the faint smell of popcorn and endings. The door latch clicked, footsteps in the hall. The doorknob turned. The door opened, and the shape in the doorway paused like a confession, deciding whether to take its first breath. She didn't turn on the light. The hall's dimness held her in a careful outline, shoulders lowered, bag strap sliding down her arm, the small exhale people give when they're about to try honesty. Arjun, she said, softer this time. The syllables tried to find me like fingers searching for a hand in the dark. Don't, I answered, not loud, just enough to hold the shape of the room. Hum from the refrigerator. The faint drip-drip from the bathroom tap I kept meaning to fix. You notice small things when big things fall apart. It's how the brain takes inventory. If the world is ending, list your belongings. She stepped inside, took off her shoes. That domestic ritual heel-toe slip had never sounded so intimate, so wrong. I didn't plan for you to see that, she said. People say that like intention could repair impact. Who is he? I asked. Silence filled itself with guesses. His name was Duraj. They met at a client's offsite. He listened. He made her feel seen. He felt light. The word stabbed in a place adjectives shouldn't reach. Light, as if we were darkness. As if our years together were a problem to be solved by a man with an open collar and easy jokes. I didn't raise my voice. I asked questions with the care of a surgeon working on a heart he knew he could not save. How long? 4 months. Why, I don't know, she said, which is how people avoid saying I do. After she went to the couch, I went to the balcony and let the rain mist my face. The city was a soft machine, whirring. I wanted to be angrier than I was. I wanted to smash a glass and watch it jewel the floor with regret, but all I felt was tired, the kind that settles into your bones like winter. The bedroom behind me looked staged, bed made too neatly, pillows symmetrical. A room trying to pass as normal. Inside that neatness, I heard the future breathe differently. If grief has a chronology, it starts with confusion, wanders through bargaining, crosses anger like a toll bridge, and arrives, eventually, in the country of no return. I wasn't there yet. I was still paying at the booth, pockets turned out, counting coins made of memories. I didn't sleep that night. The ceiling became a map of constellations only I could see. At 3:17 a.m., the fridge kicked on like an old friend clearing his throat before telling you a truth. At 4:02, the neighbor's shower started. At 5:30, the first birds tried singing to a morning that hadn't earned it. When dawn finally seeped into the room, it made everything honest. Dust on the dresser, a hair tie on the floor, the outline her body used to warm into the mattress. The day begins, refuses to negotiate, and asks you what you're going to do with the ruins. I brewed coffee, didn't drink it. The smell alone was enough to make me feel like I had done something. Over the next week, the apartment performed its new role with awful competence. 2 toothbrushes still stood together like naive witnesses. 2 coffee mugs lined up like an argument pretending to be a duet. I found traces, receipts tucked into a tote, a hotel pen in her pencil cup. A playlist she listened to at odd hours, songs about oceans and cities that weren't ours. The traces weren't loud, they were careful. They were a handwriting she once told me I could read. I started boxing things. Not throwing them out, not yet, just giving them edges. Grief appreciates edges, it spills. The messages started on day 3, from him. Duraj, he wanted to clear the air, as if air were a file he could name and save. This isn't about you, he wrote, which is the anthem of men who take what isn't theirs and call it fate. He suggested meeting for coffee, somewhere public, somewhere safe for the story he wanted to narrate. I agreed. Not because I wanted his version, but because I needed to know the dimensions of the room I was now trapped in. We chose a cafe near the lake. Morning light lay cold on the water. Joggers passed as if bodies could outrun their secrets. He arrived in a blue shirt that looked expensive and unbothered, sat down like a man who rehearsed care. Arjun, he nodded. His eyes held that managerial empathy taught in leadership courses, mirroring concern without drowning in it. I don't want to be the villain here, he began. I almost laughed. Then don't audition, I said. He did the small smile people do when they think you're being clever to hide your pain. Then he said he fell for her honesty, her resilience, her ability to hold a room. He said it like a discovery, like he'd found a new continent with her name on it, as if I hadn't known those things for years, as if love was a lottery and he had the better ticket. Did you ask if she was married? I asked. He blinked. Of course, he said quickly and then slower. We didn't mean for it to happen. People say that about weather and acceleration and the nights that begin with a second drink. He talked about adult choices and complicated hearts. I watched the foam collapse in my cappuccino and thought how everything folds eventually. The head of a beer, a promise, a man. When he paused for my absolution, I gave him quiet instead. It was the only currency I had left that felt like mine. He mistook it for grace. On the way home, the lake looked like brushed steel, unbothered by the drama of those who stood beside it. An old couple fed pigeons. A kid kicked a bottle cap and made a goal between two benches. The world kept building its small joys while my house sank. That evening I changed the bedsheets, not because it would fix anything. Because the body needs a fresh surface to collapse on. In the linen closet, I found the quilt her mother made us, yellow triangles stitched into a sun that could cover two people with something like mercy. I folded it back into the dark. Not yet. The turning point didn't arrive with trumpets. It arrived with a morning where her side of the wardrobe was less full. Clothes gone, hangers like bones, a note on the dresser. I need time. The handwriting looked like her voice when she was 19 and fearless enough to love me without hesitation. I sat in the chair by the window, the one she always stole, and watched rain thread the glass. Regret has a smell. Wet dust, old books, the inside of a taxi on a Sunday evening. I texted one word, okay. It wasn't surrender, it was a border. A line the daylight drew because the night had been too accommodating. A week later, the bell rang at 7:12 p.m., and when the door opened, it wasn't a delivery, it was her mother, holding the yellow quilt like a flag of a country that no longer existed. Her mother, Suman, has a way of making rooms fall into place. She set the quilt on the couch and sat without asking, the way family members can still claim old rights amid new ruins. You don't eat enough when you're hurting, she said, scanning my face, the kitchen, the missing pair of shoes by the door. She didn't cry, she didn't accuse. She adjusted the cushion behind her back and waited for me to take the first honest breath. Where is she? I asked. With a friend, she said, and we both listened to the lie respectfully as it passed through. We raise our children to be brave, she continued, and sometimes they are brave in the wrong direction. The line landed gently, like a towel placed over a shivering animal. I'm not here to defend her, she added, but I won't let you hate yourself either. Guilt and dignity don't sit easily at the same table. They wrestle for the check, talk over each other, accuse the waiter. What do you need me to do? She asked. I looked at the quilt, at the empty chair across from me. Nothing, I said, just drink tea. We did 2 cups, sugar in hers, none in mine. The small domestic ceremony felt like a confession without language. Night fell without performance. The city turned on its lamps like stars rehearsing the part. I stood at the window, her mother in the kitchen washing cups she had not dirtied, when the door opened again. She stepped inside, hair damp, eyes searching for the shape of who she used to be in this space. No suitcase, no apology printed on a banner, just exhaustion hung on a woman who had made a choice and then found out what choices cost. Ma, she whispered. Suman nodded at her daughter, then wiped her hands and left the room like a stagehand clearing props so the actors could try their scene again. We faced each other with too much history in the air to breathe properly. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness, she said, the first honest sentence we'd had in weeks. Then why? I asked. Because, she swallowed, I can't sleep in a place that doesn't know me. And this place knows my footsteps. The line hurt precisely because it was true. The apartment remembered her. The walls held the shape of her laughter, the floorboards the rhythm of her sighs. Love isn't the only thing that leaves a residue. Betrayal does too, and they mixed in the air until the room smelled like a storm. I ended it, she said, 2 words that try to be a bridge. With Duraj, she added, and the name arrived like a chair scraping. When? Yesterday. Why? She trembled. Because I mistook escape for a destination. The sentence folded her in half. She sat. I remained standing, as if height could keep me safe. You don't get points for stopping a fire you set, I said quietly, and watched the words land and burn where others might have offered water. She nodded. I know. She told me her version, the long, lonely hours. The way small resentments accumulate like dust until you write your name in them and call it evidence. How he felt like sunlight on a day when everything inside her was fog. How she meant to say no, then said maybe, then said yes, and then said yes again. Not melodrama, just ordinary human hunger choosing a shortcut and then paying the toll in shame. I kept thinking you'd notice, she whispered. I did, I said, but I kept thinking you'd stop. 2 people, both waiting for the other to be braver. We didn't raise our voices, we didn't throw history like plates. We practiced restraint like monks who had forgotten the prayers but remembered the posture. She reached for my hand. I didn't move, not out of cruelty, out of self-respect, finally remembering its own name. "What do you want from me?" I asked. She glanced at the bedroom door like memory could change the future. "Time," she said, "time, as if time is neutral, as if it doesn't take sides. And if time says no?" I asked. She nodded, tears balanced, and then spilling with the decorum of someone who hates drama but loves truth. We tried sitting in the same room for an hour, breathing the same air, letting silence do what words could not. She told me she had informed her boss. Human resources would draw their maps, print their warnings, hold their trainings that teach desire how to fill out forms. She would move her desk. She would quit if I needed it. I didn't want to be the kind of man who polices a woman's livelihood because he is bleeding. I wanted to be the kind of man who recognizes his wound and still refuses to hurt back. "Don't quit," I said. "Don't punish the version of you who shows up on time and leads well." She cried in a way that respected the room. No sobs, just a steady overflow. When the hour ended, Suman returned with the quilt. "This house is cold," she declared, and draped the sun over the couch. The yellow felt like audacity, a bright thing in a gray room. "You don't have to decide tonight," she said to both of us. I slept in the bedroom. She took the couch. In the dark, the city hummed, and the rain rehearsed its delicate percussion against the glass. At 2:11 a.m., I heard her whisper, "I'm sorry," to the ceiling, not to me. To the life she had failed to hold the way it asked to be held. Morning arrived with a pale generosity. I made coffee. She sat with her knees pulled to her chest, hair a small storm around her face. "I saw him yesterday," she said into the cup. "He said I owed you the truth." The irony didn't earn a laugh. "Do you love him?" I asked. She waited, humbled by the seriousness of the question. "No," she said, not proud. "I loved who I was with him for a while." That was the truest thing she'd said since she came back. We stared at the steam, at the light warming the table inch by inch. She reached into her bag, placed her wedding ring on the table between us like a coin for a ferryman, and said, "Tell me where to go." Morning has a way of telling the truth without raising its voice. The light slid across our table with the discipline of a tide, blessing whatever it touched without taking sides. The ring lay between us, a halo without a finger, a story without a narrator. She watched me watch it. "I can go to Ma's," she offered, "or I can stay and sleep in the guest room if we." The words tired themselves out before the sentence finished. I looked at her and saw not the villain and not the girl I married, but a person who had misjudged the weather and walked too far without an umbrella. Both of us drenched, both of us cold. "I'm not sure forgiveness and reunion are the same thing," I said. She nodded like she had expected as much, but still hoped the sentence would take a kinder turn. "Forgiveness," I continued, "is something I can do alone. Reunion needs two people who can hold a future without breaking it." She absorbed it, eyes down, hands folded, every line of her body asking permission to exhale. The room was gentle with us. The hum of the fridge, the distant traffic, a neighbor's door closing softly, a corridor of normal sounds leading us out of disaster. We took a slow inventory of our lives. What could be split? What must be sold? What would remain the same because objects don't care how you feel about them? The lemon plant had perked up since I watered it, small green insisting on itself. She smiled at it without catching herself. "You always overwater," she teased, then remembered the rules had changed and straightened the tone. "I do," I said, and let the small mercy stand. Symbolism behaves itself when you're not looking. Plants revive. Mornings forgive what evenings refuse to. We drafted practicalities. She would pack clothes this afternoon. She would take the guest room for a week, then move to her mother's flat until she found a place that matched the size of her solitude. Bills would be split cleanly. We'd keep the dog we never adopted in the space between maybe and someday. No lawyers yet, no battlefield. Just two people who once built a house taking it apart plank by plank so it wouldn't collapse on anyone's head. She watched me write it down, grateful for my steadiness in a moment when she had none. It felt like carrying someone across a river you knew neither of you would ever cross again. After lunch it rained, properly. The kind that scrubs the city and leaves it smelling like something worth believing in again. She stood at the balcony, face turned toward the wet, eyes closed. Regret looks like that, a person learning the cost of their appetite and deciding not to be hungry like that anymore. I stood in the doorway and didn't touch her, not punishment, respect, grief like love needs room to move. The lemon plant drank, cars hissed. Somewhere below, a child shouted at a puddle and won. She packed quietly. Gentle hands, careful folds, a woman who knew how to leave without making a mess that would poison the room later. She paused at the bookshelf, fingers tracing the spines of the poets who had once taught us how to be brave. "Keep them," she said, "they're yours." We both knew courage is communal. We borrow it from each other and pretend we own it. At the door, she lifted the suitcase handle and looked at me the way you look at a familiar landscape before a long trip, not to memorize, but to thank. "I am sorry," she said again, and this time the apology found a chair and sat down. I walked her to the lift. The hallway smelled like rain and old paint we didn't touch. The elevator arrived with a soft bell. She stepped in, turned. "Arjun," she said and stopped. "There are sentences that become kinder when you don't finish them." I nodded. The doors slid shut, and in the reflection I looked older and somehow new, like a city after a storm, damage visible, air cleansed. I went back inside and opened the windows. Let the rain speak to the rooms. Let the rooms answer politely. In the days that followed, the apartment learned my footsteps again. The empty chair across the table became less accusatory. Morning light did what it always does. It forgave, not me, not her, just everything. I watered the lemon plant and didn't overdo it. Mr. Pinto from the restaurant called to check in. He didn't ask for details. He told me the special was back, the one she loved, and that I should stop by when the rain got tired. I promised I would. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Some places hold too much. Some places hold you up when you're not looking. One evening I found the ring where I'd left it, in a small bowl by the door with keys and coins, and the talismans men collect to feel prepared. I held it. It weighed less than I remembered. Or maybe I just weighed more now with all this new knowing. I didn't throw it away. I didn't put it back on. I placed it in a drawer with passports and photographs, objects that prove you belonged somewhere once. Then I made tea and stood by the window and watched the city change colors like a patient animal. In the morning the light arrived quietly and touched the lemon plant first, then the table, then my hands. Forgiveness without reunion. A soft, ordinary mercy. I breathed in the smell of coffee and rain-scrubbed air and said, "Not to anyone in particular, okay." Air and said, "Not to anyone in particular, okay."